why was there no intellectual relationship between the mother and son? Because that really disturbed me. I said, every time there's anything that's intellectual or inquisitive, it's always with one of the male figures. And obviously, he needs a male figure in his life, obviously. So it wasn't that I didn't think that should happen, but I said, but it's only the emotional things that you portray between Wesley and I didn't feel that was real. And yeah, I rubbed some people the wrong way because of that, but it was something I truly, truly felt and I believed in. I see single parents all the time who are struggling. If you are a good parent, you are there, you are helping your child through all of their emotional and intellectual and all of what they want to do in their lives, and it's super important. And I also think it was prophetic because young people today are the ones who really do know technology. It's like second nature to them. They are doing things literally. The younger people in my life, personal life, can read that scroll on the Twitter feed faster than my eyes can actually see it. And it's something it's happening because they've grown up with technology. They're not afraid of it in the same way that some people in my generation and my parents' generation were. So I think that's one thing. And I do think that it changed with the studio. I think that there was a decision not to go too far with the Crusher Picard, and because obviously there are many directions it could have gone. It could have been really fascinating. It was fascinating as it was. We got to explore different things. And I thought that Attached was one of the attempts to do that.
It was so sad that kind of got reset at the end of that episode.
Yeah.
That's one of my favorite episodes.
Oh, thanks.
And I loved watching that, you know, hashtag Team Bev. I loved watching the Beverly Picard thing, and then they shared this strong emotional connection.
Yeah.
And at the end of it, you know, Picard, I think, comes to Beverly and is like, hey, so, you know, should we go further with this?
Well, I think what's interesting is I just wish that connection, whether it was going one way or another, could have just been explored more, because I think it's really interesting, the idea that you have to work with somebody that you have an emotional connection with, and then how do you deal with that and how it changes. And that's a really interesting thing in the workplace, I should think. But in terms of what I feel about the shift now, I will say this, that I am absolutely humbled every time I do a convention by the impact of the show in general, and by the role model that all of our characters, I'm certainly not going to take credit for Dr. Crusher. That was created by writers, and it was a joint effort with costumers and makeup and hair and all of that. But I think it's just wonderful that there can be role models for young women and men, and that they are positive. And I also find it deeply moving that many people who have had operations and have trouble and are in hospitals for multiple operations, Star Trek and just belief in the medical profession, that things are going to be curable and that you can do this, and that actually helps to keep them going and get them through it. That's fantastic. I mean, what an honor to be even part of it. And also, I have had people who have gone through multiple foster homes and have literally told me that watching Dr. Crusher was the mother figure. And I'm like, okay, so I don't take any personal responsibility for that, but that's fantastic that that exists for people, because how hard to have to go through different foster homes, and to have something like Star Trek, be it Picard, be it number one, no matter who, Deanna Troi, Guinan, to have these role models is so important, and I'm totally in awe of the people who created the show. I'm much more as I'm older, because I realize what a triumph it was. And a lot of that, of course, is because of the fans, but we have smart fans. And when I first got into Star Trek, people were always going, oh, these weirdo fans, and you know what? And that was totally not true. We have amazingly bright fans, and I'm very, very pleased to be part of it.
Another question we have for you is that, so you were one of only 6 women to ever direct Star Trek, and wanted to know what it was like directing TNG, and how would you characterize the role of women behind the scenes more generally?
Oh, that's a tough one, because I think it really is hard. I came from academia, in terms of, and I was like, I would be choreographer of a theater company in New York, or I, I was used to speaking up, and I was given the respect to say what I felt, and that was what you did. You didn't always have to agree, but as long as you were respectful. And I really was not good at politics. I'm probably still horrible at politics. But I think people weren't used to that in the studio system. There really is a chain of command. And I wasn't sensitive to what that really was because I didn't understand it at all. I came from a very different background. So I think I didn't understand why it took so long to even get a directing position, because I had directing and choreographic experience working as choreographer on Jim Henson's film. I really did, take charge on scenes, and would walk into a stage and be the one who would pick the dancers and pick this. So but I never was given that, and then I finally got a chance, and it was fantastic. It was probably my favorite time, because I got to use much more of my mind and do things that I've been wanting to do for all the seasons, like, use the medical jars that no one had ever, they'd always been on the set, but I actually got to put something in it, which was also a sense of humor, because like, I was, I'd say to Brent, I'm putting your stuff in that jar, man. And I'd take a little sample and I'd put it in there, because no one had ever used this stuff. So that was super, super fun. What can I say? I think it's changing. I think it's finally starting to open up. But I can say to everyone here, you must be vigilant, because there are things happening right now in the South that are taking away women's rights, and I think we all must be aware of things. It took years for things to happen, and they can be, taken away very quickly. So. For whatever that's worth, I don't know, but I remember growing up. Let me just say, I grew up, and my mother started off as a bank teller, and she became the first vice president of a bank in Ohio. Okay, and she was also fired because she was told on Christmas Eve, because she was told she didn't have a family to support. She was a woman, not a man. And she had done nothing wrong, but the bank had been bought by a larger bank in New York, and that's what they did at that time. They came in, and had it been 10 years later, she might have, thought about suing or something, but she didn't. And I grew up watching, literally, I would come from middle school, and I would have the guy she would be secretary, she would have reached the point of secretary, and in front of me would actually unzip her dress and say, "Oh, we got a red one on today," and zip it back up. So I grew up where there was a tremendous amount of Mad Men sort of discrimination with women, and you had to put up with a lot that was humiliating. So I think that really got me to be strong about women's rights and to care about things like that, because it was really not fun to have to witness certain things that went on. And it happened to me also as a young person who was dancing and singing and trying to do things, the assumption of a lot of other grief that comes with that when you're working so hard. So it was really interesting. So anyway, that's enough on that.
Thanks so much. Aliza, I see.
Yeah, I just wanted to say it's amazing to hear you talk about speaking up on set and with the writers and producers, because I think that's sometimes the hardest thing for us to do when we're in a position where we're like, I feel like this is not quite, the message that we want to say. I have an idea, and as an actor and writer myself, and producer, it's so great to hear you say that, because sometimes I feel like I might sabotage my own career and the politics and all that stuff by being the one who's always saying, no, let's do it this way, let's think of that, that's offensive, having to constantly call that out. I feel like I'm sacrificing my own, relationships with people, professional relationships.
It's a very fine line, I think, and I'm sure it happens in academia as well. It's a fine line, and I do not think I do it particularly well, so I want to make that very clear. I'm struggling just like everybody else, because I think what happens is, you know, most of the things we do that are from there, it's a fear. It's a fear of not being seen as who you are. It's a fear of somebody taking advantage of you. It's fear. And so what happens when we feel fears, we become very defensive. And I know that you know, a lot of people go, oh, she's so tough or whatever. Actually, you're just covering up your own, you know, fear. And so it's something to learn how to do it in a way that doesn't totally offend people and put them off, and to sort of deal with your fear and go, okay, it's all right, and now I'm going to just say this. Because the truth is, there are a lot of people and a lot of women who do manipulate through sexuality and using things, and that's a fact too. So you have to just look at, how do I feel, who am I, what am I willing to lose, what is my responsibility, and you know, what matters the most. And those are decisions you have to make every day, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, especially in terms of like having these conversations about what each generation does, like we can so easily forget, right, what was happening 30, 60 years ago. And so having these conversations and pulling those threads through, and yeah, seeing the progress that we've made, but seeing that some of the struggles are just kind of cycling around and around. And by talking to each other, I think that's where we gain strength. Of like, are you feeling this fear? Oh, I am too. Like, how did you cope with it?
Yeah, when we were preparing for this panel, we also talked about the episode Remember Me, which is, I think, such an important, powerful episode. And that moment when Dr. Crusher says, you know, if there's nothing wrong with me, maybe there's something wrong with the universe. And
That's one of my favorite.
Absolutely. It's just like, I think it's such
I want that on a t-shirt.
Yeah, you just be able to, you know that you examine yourself when things feel wrong, and you say, you know, what could I do differently? But sometimes there's a point where you just have to like speak your truth and realize that it's okay to, you know, tell other people like, this doesn't feel good, and here's like how we can make it better. And
I love that episode because it also showed that, you know, she didn't just panic. It was like she really was she was investigating it, she was curious, she was looking at it. And I really do feel that the times when I am under duress, I go, come on, guys, just do it like a scientist. You know, be curious. Just look at what it is. Don't be afraid of seeing what it is. And you know, I wish I'd seen that sooner in myself, because I think that's really the way to go. I think it's the way we can all find something in common as well.
Absolutely. So we have one more question, and hopefully we'll have time to take a couple questions from the floor as well. So the last question, just for everyone, we want to throw it out there, is what do you think that Star Trek Discovery and other Trek going forward can learn from the women of Next Generation?
Well, I think there's certainly a lot about the history of Trek and women behind the scenes that they can learn. It's a little bit about what you've talked about, and you pointed out that only 6 women have ever directed Star Trek in 50 years.
Out of like 730 odd hours.
How many hours of Star Trek do we have? And it seems like that's starting to change. In terms of Discovery, I've been talking a lot about diversity, including women, people of color, and people of different sexualities and gender identities. You know, and it's kind of like it's about time. You know, how did it take in 50 years to have a gay character on Star Trek?
Absolutely. And I think that another thing is, you know, there's a sort of narrative when we talk about women in Star Trek that Next Generation, you know, well, they only had women in quote-unquote nurturing roles. And I think that actually isn't so much the problem as the problem that those roles weren't valued, and that's something we see in our society, that you get paid less for doing these jobs that are like feminized and caring roles, even though they're super, super important. Mental health professional, doctor, super, super important jobs, and that it's important to see women in a diversity of roles, like security chiefs, badass Klingons, as well as more caring roles, and you know, to see men in those roles too. So it's about a range.
And I think something that Trek always did well is diversity of women in their personalities too. So you had people who were more feminine, you know, in the traditional sense, you know, caring and motherly, and then you also had people who were just, you know, harder, more badass, more, you know, fighter, and all of those were okay, and all of those were portrayed. So yeah, definitely not pigeonholing that personality trait too.
For sure, and on the first day, Dr. Mae Jemison was here, and she was talking about how images matter. And it was interesting for me hearing her say that as a child, she assumed that she was going to space. Because I know for me, I've had experiences where I'm like, I haven't assumed anything, and what it means to be able to like see yourself. And sometimes you know, you have to be the first, right? If you don't see yourself, you have to put yourself out there, right? And I think that's what a lot of fan creation does as well, so.
Yeah, Sally Ride said, if you can't see it, you can't be it.
Yeah, I think we've definitely like hit on the key thing about representation, why it's so important. It's not just about having the token character, it's about making sure that there's a diversity. I think you said that really well, Jarrah.
I also, you know, do you realize Tasha, Jarrah, and I never had one scene together? Or it was just she and I? And Denise and I were always aware of that, because Denise and I I've directed Denise in a theater production. She was fabulous. I mean, she's in the same theater company as I am in LA. And I mean, that's really interesting, because that's the sort of thing that until you start to go back and look at it, you don't think much of it. But why did I never have any rapport with her? You know, she might have gotten injured. We might have had a discussion. What would that have been like? You know, I love thinking about things like that. So, you know, and also, I mean, it was so funny. You've heard about this with that Robin Hood episode, how Marina and I had to we would do things like the traditional throw pots and stuff. And of course, I actually had studied fencing, I had studied saber, I had done stunt, I would choreograph fights for theater companies in New York, and yet, you know, I rarely was used in that way, because even at a convention, I remember coming into a convention, and I was in high heels, really high heels, this is quite a while ago, and I did a pratfall on stage, and people panicked, because I mean, now anyone who knows pratfalls knows I couldn't have possibly, I mean, I would have been dead, right? So, but it was shocking to have a woman in heels do a pratfall. It was like, ooh, scary. And that's what's so interesting. It's constantly something where, even in conventions, you see that there's a certain behavior that the women are supposed to do more than the guys. And it's okay, but it's there. So I find it interesting. There's no judgment on it, because there's no point in a judgment. But
Can I write a fanfic of you and Tasha Yar fencing?
Yeah! Awesome. Well, let's see if we take a couple audience questions, starting over on this side.
Hi there. My sister and I have been coming to the conventions for years, and we have noticed almost a total lack of female moderators on these panels. We were wondering if you have any insight as to why that might be.
Well, you know, I'm a podcaster. I'm not like an insider, I would say, in the convention business, but I think that there is a bit of a, you know, you go to who you know, and there's I think maybe it's not, I don't think it's intentional. I think it's who do you think of first, and when you are someone who's already risen to a fairly high up position, like odds are you are maybe a white guy, and then you're thinking about your friends or other people that you meet, and because women are already underrepresented in like powerful positions in the fandom, they just aren't the first people considered, but there's lots of awesome women doing awesome things in the fandom, and I think it would be great to see more people moderating panels.
Chase was moderating a panel in Germany, and she did a fantastic job. So, I mean, I think it's starting to change, right? I think so.
This is our official request for more female moderators.
Thank you.
Thanks. We'll take a question over on this side.
I have something for Agent McFadden. What you said a few minutes ago about the medical technology in Star Trek. About 2 months ago, I was in the hospital for a quadruple bypass on my heart, and I kept kidding all of the nurses and the doctors, I can't wait till the day when they have this little thing they can wave over you. You're cured. You're good for another 100 years. It'll be someday.
And it's starting to happen. They actually have a medical tricorder that's very close. I mean, they've had the contest, the X Prize, and it's really starting to happen. It's phenomenal what's going on also with the study of the brain and the discoveries and what's happening even with, you know, radiology. We are so advanced. You know, I would have died about 5 times had I not been living now, and I think it's going to just get better and better. But how are you feeling now?
I'm feeling okay now, except when I cough, it still hurts a little bit, right in here and out a little bit. But yeah, someday we'll have where they can cure anything. You'll
Wouldn't
live
that be
forever.
great? That would be great. Well, I'm glad you're doing better. Lots of love.
Thank you. We'll take the question over here.
Hi, first of all, back to talking about Remember Me, I just had to say, when I wake up in the morning and I start reading the news, the first thing that starts going through my head is, well, there's nothing wrong with me, there must be something wrong with the universe. But my question is, so with Discovery coming out, the media has been kind of highly emphasizing, wow, this is the first time we have a female captain in Star Trek, or a female lead character. And that's not actually true, because we've had Captain Janeway.
That's right.
So what do you think is different about it this time, or is it just cultural amnesia that they've generally forgotten that we had Captain Janeway? Like, what's up with that? What do you guys think?
I've been hearing more so that it's the first black female lead character. That might be what they're meaning to say. I'm not sure.
I certainly think it depends what outlets you read, right? I certainly think there's some amnesia there. But there is a point though that Michael Burnham, the lead of Discovery, she's in a unique position in terms of Trek, where the show, it seems, is going to be really focused on her character quite a bit. So less of an entourage kind of cast, and more really focused on her and the events around her. So for whatever that's worth. But yeah, no, I think it's important to say, hey, look, there's 50 years of history that's come before this, and it's not just Trekkies that care about that. There's that's an important part of why this exists and why this is such an epic franchise and an important franchise, and so long lasting and has such an impact. And so we can't just erase all of that and say, oh, but look, we're being so diverse. It's like, well, Trek was breaking ground in the 60s. You've got to acknowledge that. So yeah, point taken.
And I think also, I think it's so smart with what the writers are doing. Because we've had a lot of the grand ones where it's the captain and the ensemble, and I think to actually see what would it be like from one person's point of view much more is really something I've thought about, and I think it's really fascinating. And I love, I think a lot of it's not even amnesia as much as just their marketing. To market something, you say things in particular ways, but I think it's going to be awesome. I'm actually very excited to see it.
And I think it's really important that she's a woman of color, and I also think Michelle Yeoh's casting was really smart. We've had the Asian characters on Star Trek have not been some of the strongest. Like, we got Hoshi, we got Kim, we have Keiko O'Brien. There are some characters that all could have really, I think, been
Fabulous actors.
Absolutely.
Fabulous.
Absolutely.
Fabulous.
But unfortunately didn't get a ton of great material, and so I think having Michelle Yeoh in this command position is also super smart. She's going to be fabulous.
However long she lasts.
Wow.
I mean, come on, she looks like a dead Captain Walking.
I still think it's a good casting. And Sneeko Martin, great. It's going to be great. Yes.
Hello, my name is Cameron. I just wanted to thank Gates as well for being an integral part of my childhood. I grew up watching The Next Generation, Voyager, and Deep Space Nine as well. So being a millennial, I hope that means something to the cast, that it's still going on. And as part of that, and as part of seeing women in more leadership roles or more important roles in TV, sort of as a man, being a feminist as well, I'm curious, and I'm hoping you already sort of kind of addressed this question, but to the larger philosophical and moral precepts that were behind Star Trek, I haven't seen as much of that in the movies, and those are movies that are supposed to be, and some of that is marketing with the new show, but I'm personally very concerned because I love Star Trek so much, and I love that aspect of it being a very, this is important, there are deeper meanings, this is what the United Federation of Planets was based on. Do you guys see that continuing into Discovery, or I'm somewhat concerned just because of the advertising, I think, probably.
Well, I think certainly I'm not on the inside on that, but I feel that for us, for the next gen, there was a difference between the studio doing the movies versus the producers of the TV show. In terms of what really portrayed our ensemble the best, it was episodes like All Good Things. You really felt our bond and how important our relationships were. The movies, it was different. It was really more from the studio. It was a different thing. It's like, okay, we want to hit the 18 to 36-year-old males, and we want this and we want that. I think Obviously, I was not on the inside, so this is all conjecture, but that was my impression very much. And I look at things like it's funny, you know, even in the pop dolls, they did not do a Beverly Crusher.
So bad.
And so there's a hobbyist in LA who has been making Dr. Crusher pop dolls, and I've been selling them to raise money for my nonprofits, which we do art and we do theater, music, and movement projects now in France and also in the United States. And so,
where can we find them? On your website?
I'm going to be auctioning off one this weekend, and then I only do it for auctions, and every penny goes to the nonprofit, which are listed nonprofits. And I pretty much sell one every convention, and it's really cool, you know. So that kind of discrimination still goes on. It's weird. And even in a Pez once, instead of putting Crusher, they put a figure of the world or something. I mean,
I went over to the Hallmark booth that's here.
It made me feel so bad.
Actually, this weekend, Hallmark is here promoting their little plushies, and for the next gen, they didn't put any of the women in it. So it's like Data, Picard, Geordi, and Worf. And I went and asked them, and they were like, "Well, you know, we picked the most popular characters, and then maybe
they don't
do a second wave." And but I don't think anyone's actually tested.
It is a self-fulfilling prophecy because they're just like, oh, these are the ones we think will be popular, and those are the ones they make, and then everyone buys them, and they're like, nobody wants the women ones because they're not it's not there for us to have. So.
And these are stuffed toys, people. Like,
but that's again, so there's only role models for certain characters, and then you don't have them for the others. So yeah, it still goes on.
And Gates, earlier you did say, talking about the intellectual relationship that was kind of missing from the show between you and Wesley. I think that also plays into what, you know, the question asker, it's a weird thing to say, the question asker said about being a millennial, and we have an entire generation of people who watch this in their formative years, and seeing that relationship, you know, maybe, and that also goes back to the discovery question, Jarrah, about what we would like to see moving forward in terms of women and representation. That's something. Knowing that young boys are watching these female role models as well, and it's just as important for them to see all shades of women.
Yeah, right on. I have a son, and he's just turned 26, and I can say my son and also my nephew and niece, and I have a lot of students who I know who are millennials, and I will make a generalization here. The millennials that I have encountered, they do not see race, gender. They just don't see it in the same way. It's like you're a person. I wouldn't know. Unlike when my generation, someone would say, "Oh yeah, well this black guy said." No one does that. No one does it. You don't know if Joe could be Korean, Joe could be Caucasian, Joe could be Latino, you don't know. And it's such a relief, it's so awesome. They are gonna lead us forward, yeah, you know? Right?
If we let that lead us forward.
Well, I think it kind of goes back to what you were saying about, you know, kids these days growing up with technology. They're born with it. It's ubiquitous. It's everywhere, and so they're not afraid of it. And that's, I think, when I look back to growing up with TNG. You know, I grew up as it was airing, and so there wasn't anything weird or new about it. I was learning what the world was, and part of that was what I saw on television. Right. So, you know,
Yeah, but you know, the issues are still here, so we still have to keep talking about them, unfortunately. But you know, we love having these kinds of conversations, and it's been great to share this time with you. So thanks so much, Lucia, Aliza, Gates, and Kayla, and hope to see you around the convention floor. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.